Hi, my name is Rabbi Yosef Tropper, and I thank you so much for joining. Today's topic is Tisha B'Av, the fast of the 9th of Av. And the purpose of this segment is to provide a short and thought-provoking idea about Tisha B'Av. The topic is empowering yourself. And I'd like to begin with a very fascinating Gemara. The Gemara is in Brachas, at the end, 56b. The Gemara talks about dreams and how to interpret dreams. Dreams are always a very fascinating topic. And the Gemara tells of a dream that a man had, and he came to consult with Rabbi Yishmael, who was a famous interpreter of dreams. And in this dream, this man dreamt himself, and he watched as his jaws, upper and lower jaw, his jaws fell off. And he was very concerned that this was a bad omen or something horrible was going to happen to him. And he went running to Rabbi Yishmael and asked him, what does this mean? Rabbi Yishmael calmed him and said, have no fear, this is a good sign. This is a very good dream. What does it mean? It obviously means, says Rabbi Yishmael, from my expert experience with dreams, this dream means that there were people in the Roman government who were plotting against you. They had a conspiracy against you, and they were trying to get you killed. And they were going to go to the king, and they had a whole plan, and you were going to be in big trouble. However, they got killed, and their conspiracy fell through, and they no longer are able to hurt you. Rashi explains, where did Rabbi Yishmael see this from? Rashi explains that Rabbi Yishmael saw this because the jaws represent the ability to talk, speech, and therefore the fact that they fell off, the fact that the jaws fell off, showed that speech was no longer possible and that they could no longer say anything against him. Now, whenever I read this Gemara, it always puzzled me that there's no mention of the Roman generals here. This man saw his own jaws that fell off. So that means that he lost his power of speech. Where do we see that anyone else was plotting against him and that they no longer are able to do it? It's a very interesting question. I think answering this question will provide a very relevant idea about Tisha B'Av and in life in general. So let's move on to one introduction, and then we'll come back to this question and hopefully explain it. The Chafetz Chaim tells us that the Gemara brings down that Lashon Hara kills, evil slander kills 3 people. It causes damage to the one that's being spoken against, socially but also spiritually. It causes damage to the one that's speaking, and it causes damage to the one or others that are listening. Why is this so? The Chafetz Chaim quotes from the Zohar that whenever someone speaks Lashon Hara, he is scrutinizing someone else. He's looking at the victim and pointing a finger at him and saying that he has flaws. And in Shemaim, in heaven, this instigates the investigators to look into him and to start looking at this person's merits, at the victim's merits. And they say, oh, look, he has all these averos that he's done, he has all these things, because everyone has different sins that they're still repenting for, and everyone has faults in life. And they see these things, and this ends up bringing punishment his way. But once they're looking at the books and looking at other people, they also start looking at and scrutinizing the one that spoke. And they say, oh, you think you could speak? Let's look into your merits and let's see what you have. And this causes damage to the one that spoke. And additionally, they look at the people that were involved in listening, and thereby encouraging the Lashon Hara to be said. And they look at their merits and say, well, they also deserve to be punished. So Lashon Hara could end up killing or hurting or damaging, God forbid, 3 people. This is a very scary idea. But the Chafetz Chaim says that really whenever we speak Lashon Hara, whenever we say evil slander about others, we're really hurting ourselves. We are giving power for heaven to look into and to scrutinize our actions, and therefore bring judgment against ourselves. And so I believe that's exactly what's going on in this Gemara. This Gemara is telling us that this man, who had come to Rabbi Yishmael to have his dream interpreted, possibly used his mouth for inappropriate things, and possibly said things that he shouldn't have said. And this empowered others to hurt him. However, once his mouth fell off, this showed that he no longer was using his mouth as a weapon, and that he no longer was saying anything negative. And therefore, Rabbi Yishmael said, if your jaws fell off, your mouth stopped talking, so then obviously the ones that you were empowering to hurt you, God forbid, through your speech, have been neutralized and can no longer do any damage to you. And that's how Rabbi Yishmael saw it. And when we think about this idea, we see a powerful lesson in life, that what goes around comes around. We are the ones that determine whether Hashem will look at us favorably by doing good actions, or God forbid, whether Hashem will look into our actions and scrutinize us because of the way we're talking about others and the way we're treating others. This idea finds root in the whole theme of Tisha B'Av. The Jews sent the Meraglim, they sent the spies to Eretz Yisrael, And God said, this is a great land, and I'm going to take you there, and I'm going to take care of you and bring you into the land. But the Jews didn't want to believe it. The Jews didn't want to accept it, and they sent the spies, and the spies came back with Lashon Hara, with evil slander about the land, and Lashon Hara about Moshe, how Moshe was trying to kill them, and Lashon Hara about Hashem, how Hashem was incapable of taking them out. And all this evil slander that was said empowered that day of Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, to be a day of tragedy, sadness, and pain for the Jews. And the only way to fix that is for us to realize that we are solely responsible for our actions and the way we talk. And when we say negative things, we, God forbid, empower the negative forces in the world to come against us and bad things to happen to us. And when we use our mouth for positive things like Torah and Tefillah and saying good words and kindness towards other people, then we are empowering and bringing into the world beauty, love, and only healthy things. And when we keep this in mind and we realize that the entire purpose of Tisha B'Av is for us to take responsibility for ourselves and to realize that it's in my hands. Mavas b'chaim b'yad halashon. It's in my mouth. The way I talk will determine the course of my life and those around me. And what's very fascinating is that in the famous story of Rus, we find that Naomi had a very horrible life. Her and her husband forsook the Jewish people and didn't want to share all their money and wealth and food, and therefore they ran away to Moab. And Hashem was very upset, and what ended up happening in the whole story is that Naomi's husband first died. Naomi's husband and 2 children, Machlon and Kilion, lost all their money, lost all their wealth, lost all their animals. They still didn't take the hint that they had done something wrong. Then they started losing their own lives, slowly but surely, until Naomi was left by herself, a widow, and her sons had died. And there's a whole story about Rus and Arpa, not for now. And the Pasuk says, very interestingly, that Naomi comes back and she says that my name used to be Naomi, but she went back to Eretz Yisrael to do tshuva and to admit that there had been miscalculations and that she turned her back on the Jews, and now it was time to refocus on them. And she says, don't call me Naomi anymore, call me now Mara, because my life has been bitter. And when she describes it, she says that I've had horrible things happen to me, V'Hashem anabi, Hashem punished me, V'Shakai herali, and Shakai has also brought bad upon me. Now the Vilna Gaon asks that whenever we speak about the name of Hashem, which means din and judgment, we always use the word Elokim. Elokim means judgment. And therefore, this pasuk is very strange. Naomi says to everyone, V'Hashem anabi, Yud Kei Vav Kei. Hashem, instead of saying Elokim, but Hashem is the one that punished me. Now the Vilna Gaon says, what's going on over here? It's not Hashem. Obviously, it's the same God, but there's different attributes that are used. So why are you using the word Hashem, that Hashem punished me? You should be using the word Elokim punished me. The Vilna Gaon says something very scary. The Vilna Gaon says that there was once a king who had 2 sons, and there was a big rivalry between them. And it was a big debate who was going to take over, and one day, one son got up and murdered his younger brother. And he realized that this was a horrible thing. He ran to the king and he started begging him for mercy. Please forgive me for what I did. And the king said, how could I ever forgive you? If you think that I'm forgiving you because I have so much mercy because you're my son, but I have so much mercy, I can't forgive you because I have so much mercy for my other son that you murdered and punished. So I'm not punishing you out of din, out of punishment. I'm punishing you out of my love for my other son that you murdered. And so the Vilna Gaon explains that it's the same thing. Hashem said, I'm not punishing you and your family out of Elokim, out of din, because I'm punishing you that I want to hurt you and I want you to suffer. I'm punishing you out of love for Klal Yisrael because of what you did to them and that you forsook them, and until you realized what you did wrong and came back, the punishment would continue, which is ultimately what happened. So what we see is that we empower Hashem to punish us, and we empower Hashem to reward us. Our actions empower what happens. And what the Vilna Gaon is saying is very scary, that whenever we hurt other people, God forbid, and we call to Hashem for mercy, Hashem says, I can't give you mercy, you're hurting other people. And we have to be conscious of the way that we talk and treat others. And I believe that this is one of the most important lessons of all of Tisha B'Av. May we take this to heart and recognize that Hashem only wants to do good for us, and that our actions are really powerful. We build, we create, and God forbid we could also destroy. And when we take responsibility for the words that come out of our mouths and the way that we speak to others, then we will be on the way to redemption. May Hashem wipe all the tears and all the suffering from the Jewish nation, and may we merit to be in Yerushalayim speedily. I thank you so much for joining, and for any questions or comments, I welcome them. Sponsorship is also available. Thank you.